From The Times and The Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Luke Jones. After a 5-day visit to the UK, which mixed geopolitics and a bit of golf, Donald Trump had some domestic advice for Keir Starmer.
You know, politics is pretty simple. It's low taxes, keep us safe, keep us out of wars, no crime, stop the crime, and in your case, a big immigration component. I think the one that's toughest and most competent on immigration is going to win the election.
That election might be 4 years away or so, but the issue is looming bigger and bigger for Starmer. Reform are ahead in the polls and have been for months. Migrant arrivals in small boats over the Channel are on the rise and have been for months. And over the past few weeks, there's again been angry protests around some of the places those migrants have been held. This time, a hotel in Epping. Protests that have turned violent and that have spread to other parts of the country too. Where is this heading? And how much of this is being stoked by far-right activists?
Our nations stand at a crossroads. For too long, immigration has eroded our cultural identity, destroyed our communities, and robbed us and our children of a safe, secure childhood.
The story today: migration, protests, and the new far right.
My name is Tom Ball and I'm a reporter at The Times.
We've had these protests outside this hotel housing migrants in Epping, which have somewhat spread and they've developed. You've been to Epping, Tom. What's it like geographically, politically?
Geographically, it's on the boundary between London and Essex. If you're a Londoner, you'll know it as the final stop on the Central Line in the east. It's a fairly affluent place. It's popular with commuters. You can get into central London within about 45 minutes. If you walk down the high street, you'll see lots of the hallmarks of middle-class British life, including a large M&S store, a Gales. There are some quite big houses behind carefully clipped hedgerows. So it's quite quiet. I think it'd be the kind of place that you might describe in journalism as leafy.
Leafy. Well, there was once upon a time that you could track the likelihood of the Lib Dem vote based on where a branch of Gales was. But it isn't Essex and Epping. It is a bit more reformy.
Well, electorally, no. Since 1974, when the constituency was created, it's returned a Conservative member every time. But that's not to say that it doesn't have some support for reform. There's also been, over the years, certain level of far-right activity as well. There have been a couple of councillors in the wider Epping Forest area who've represented small far-right groups. For the most part, it's been fairly, it's been largely within the mainstream of British politics.
And this hotel that's been the centre of unrest, what is it actually like and who is there?
So it's a hotel that's owned by Best Western. It's just off a main road. It houses, I think it's got capacity for around 200 guests. It's been used by the Home Office to house migrants since 2020. It's not been consistently housing migrants since then. There's been periods when it's not been used. But pretty much for the last 5 years, the Home Office has had a contract to use that hotel to house migrants.
And if we rewind, the upset and unrest around that hotel kicked off when?
The trigger for all this was the arrest and subsequent charging of an Ethiopian man who was a resident of the Bell and an asylum seeker. He was charged with 3 sexual offences relating to a schoolgirl and to a woman, all of which he denies. Since then, there has been rolling protests every Sunday and every Thursday with fluctuating attendance, but it has reached the scale of around up to about 1,000 protesters, both people protesting the presence of the hotel and also counter-protesters. So I think on Sunday, this most recent Sunday just gone past, there was about 1,000 people. Several hundreds of them were thought to be counter-protesters, and that was about similar size to the Sunday previous as well.
And broadly, the people there are who? Like genuine concerned locals or what?
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of people that do come to these protests are local people, concerned residents who feel that the hotel shouldn't be there, who feel that there are safety concerns over having hundreds of nearly all men, or in fact all men, who have come to this country and have been put in the middle of their community.
We're mums, we're sisters, we're aunties, we're parents of the area, so we're just here to support. Everybody is really concerned about who is in that hotel. Crime in the area is shocking, and this is a beautiful place to live, and we are all very concerned.
It's also become the focus of a lot of politics as well. People like Nigel Farage weighing in with what's happening and how it's being managed.
I have to say, every story that comes out around these undocumented young males coming into Britain, about the cost of it, about what it all means, is pushing people to a point, I think, of increasing anger. So how much more of this can the public endure?
It's one of the big political topics of the present moment, and the incident that triggered all this was shocking for local people, and a lot of them feel this has provided them with the kind of emotional spark for a concern that has been bubbling away within national politics now for several years, and that incident a couple of weeks ago has provided the spark for that simmering disquiet to bubble over.
And we should say it's not just polite people standing there with placards. It's looked quite violent at parts. I mean, how much so?
Yeah, it has occasionally devolved into violence. The most notable incident was a couple of Sundays ago when protesters began brawling with police. They kicked in a police vehicle, they were throwing bottles, and then the arrival of a counter-protest from Epping station was also a major flashpoint. The mob then kind of swerved towards them and clearly was spoiling for a fight, which then led to police having to intervene and create what was effectively a kind of human cordon around them.
Gosh. And this has also then inspired other similar events at different migrant hotels, is that right?
That's right. Over the weekend, there were several other protests in Norwich, in Glasgow, Manchester, Portsmouth, Bournemouth, Wolverhampton, all of varying sizes. But this is the scenario that the government fears. Last summer, as you'll remember, there were several weeks of what were essentially race riots, whereby you had marauding gangs of people going around migrant hotels, attacking them, attempting to set fire to some of them. And it's the nightmare scenario for the government that this might happen again.
Amongst all of these protesters in Epping, there has been a group which has been described by some as far right, one that I've never heard of, but you've done quite a lot of reporting on, Homeland. Who are they exactly?
Homeland is a group that split from another group that you may have heard of called Patriotic Alternative in 2023. The following year, Homeland then registered as a political party with the Electoral Commission. And since then, they have been trying to involve themselves in local politics.
From the Homeland Party, please welcome him on the stage. Martin, you have the mic. Remigration nation is a common sense policy. It's self-defence, and it's our right as sovereign peoples to decide what's best for our homelands.
In this instance here, they have two members, Callum Barker and Adam Clegg, who are both local to Epping and who, as soon as this started to become an issue, very quickly became quite prominent in the coordination and organisation of the protests. So Adam Clegg and Callum Barker and another individual from Homeland are the three sole administrators of a group called Epping Says No, which is a Facebook group of around 2,000 people, which has been one of the prime movers in mobilising people into protesting outside the Bell every Thursday and every Sunday.
And they say they are a political party. And in fact, in your reporting, I saw their logo, Homeland, with the H as a sort of turreted oldie-worldy castle. But the concern is that they are what?
They have been described by Hope Not Hate, an anti-fascist organisation, as Britain's largest fascist neo-Nazi group, an allegation that the group denies. The group that they split from, Patriotic Alternative, was hitherto the largest far-right organisation in the country. Several members, including the leader Mark Collett of Patriotic Alternative, are avowed admirers of Hitler. A couple of their members have been jailed, including a man called Christopher Carney, who was jailed for terror offences. Another man called Sam Melia was jailed for intent to stir up racial hatred during his trial, which I actually attended whilst I was the northern correspondent of this paper. The prosecution told the court that when police visited his home, they'd found that he had a copy of one of Oswald Mosley's book on his bedside table and a poster of Adolf Hitler in his garage.
Oh, so quite clear-cut.
Yes. So Homeland are not Patriotic Alternative, but a large contingent of their members are former Patriotic Alternative members. When Homeland first began, they were very clear in their desire to stay away from some of those more overtly racist far-right trappings that had hamstrung their forebears, such as Patriotic Alternative in the past, and adopted what they describe as sensible nationalism. So if you go on their website, as you say, they have a fairly anodyne logo of a kind of the frontage of a castle forming an H. If you go on their website, the language is all seemingly fairly couched in quite moderate terminology. But then, of course, when you look at their membership and you see the fact that lots of them have been members of Patriot Alternative, you look at some of the things that some of their members have said in the past. For example, their national media coordinator, a man called Alec Cave, was described by a judge as having views akin to Nazism after he'd made racist tweets. Kenny Smith, their leader, was a former member of Patriot Alternative.
Every position of authority and control in our homeland should be in our hands, of our people. And we have a duty to make that the case.
He and Christopher Carney, who I mentioned earlier as the man jailed for terror offences, had together formed what was called the Fascist Fitness Club for Patriot Alternative.
Fascist Fitness Club, as in like a gym?
Yeah, as a way of guys with far-right views to get buff, basically, yeah.
Okay, well, each to their own. They say, the Homeland Party, a quote you got from their spokesperson, that they are committed to political engagement through lawful electoral means and that they reject extremism and oppose fascism. When they say political engagement through lawful electoral means, what is their aim? Getting involved with protests like this in Epping? Standing for office, maybe?
So the full statement from them was, the Homeland Party is a democratic nationalist party committed to political engagement through lawful electoral means. We reject extremism and oppose fascism in principle and practice. We advocate for non-violence, self-determination and democratic reforms such as proportional representation and greater local control, not authoritarianism. Hope Not Hate describes their tactic as the ladder strategy, which is essentially getting into local government through parish councils, through grassroots organisations, and then building up from the bottom, basically, and kind of developing a level of trust within the community, and then from there potentially getting their members into Parliament, etc., etc.
In terms of what we've seen in Epping, you mentioned how the administrators on a Facebook group that was part of the organisation behind this protest in Epping worked with three men who were members of Homeland. But how actually involved have they been? I mean, were they there? Were they leading things on site? How enmeshed were they?
Yep, I've seen both Callum Barker and Adam Clegg both at the protests. Callum Barker certainly been taking the lead. He will get on the loudspeaker, will make speeches, will lead chants of "Save Our Kids." So he's certainly positioning himself as the central feudal force of these protests outside the Bell in Epping.
And do you get much sense that what Homeland are pushing in Epping is having much traction with the people of Epping?
Yes, I do. I think it's certainly fair to say that what they are saying resonates with a lot of people. But then to say that those people are far right or have sympathies for far right ideology, I think would be inaccurate. So if you talk to most people in Epping, I think they would say that they would rather that the Bell was not being used to house asylum seekers. And indeed, lots of those people are the ones who turn up on Thursday and Sunday outside the Bell and protest. But then to say that those people are far right or they share some of Homeland's other beliefs, I think would be inaccurate. So in my opinion, what Homeland are trying to do is they're trying to harness and capitalise on local disquiet and use it to their own ends in order to spread what is essentially a local issue around the country.
And how much scope do you think that they have to capitalise on this? Or for the most part, do you think that the people concerned have political homes in Reform or Labour or the Tories?
I think that immigration has become such a hot topic within the country, and the fact that the number of people arriving on small boats each year continues to rise without the government seemingly being able to do anything to reduce those numbers is an issue that for a lot of people who sit within the mainstream of British politics or have mainstream views, I think that has now become an issue that a lot of people are concerned about.
We now, of course, have Reform being the political party which, in a lot of polls is way ahead of Labour and the Conservatives. And well, this is an interesting incident for them, isn't it, these protests? Because on the one hand, this is an issue which they want to foreground and are very concerned about, but also, they don't want to be associated with violence or people being accused of being far-right neo-Nazis.
I don't think that Reform have necessarily been a million miles away from Homeland in terms of how they've looked to capitalise and involve themselves in these protests. Orla Minahan, who is the Reform Vice Chairman for Epping Forest, has been instrumental in trying to organise some of these protests. And then you have other members of the party who've been actively spreading misinformation. Lee Nalallingham, who's the Reform branch chair, spread a false rumour that migrants in Epping were being moved to Canary Wharf shortly before a protest then began in Canary Wharf. Nigel Farage himself has also repeated false claims that the police had bussed in counter-protesters into Epping.
Have a look at this video.
If these are locals, why are they getting in a police car? What time's the next bus? You wait 15 minutes for a bus and then 3 come all along at once. Look, they're all cramming in.
This shows Stand Up to Racism, as they're called, with Antifa, a violent, thuggish group, arriving at the train station and literally, by Essex police, being bussed to the Bell Hotel. These were the people that caused the disturbances. These were the people that caused the riots. Essex police caused the disturbances.
And was that just nonsense? That just wasn't the case?
Yes, I think so. I mean, the police said that it wasn't the case at all. And I was there that day. I could see the protesters arriving at the station, clearly having come there on the train or on the tube. I think where the picture becomes blurred is the fact that the protesters were then walking up towards Epping town centre, surrounded by police officers, which to some others looked like they were being led towards the protest by the police, when actually I think they were just being protected from protesters who want to do them harm.
And I guess what people are trying to figure out at the moment is whether this is symptomatic of some nationwide genuine concern. We had the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, only last week reporting that long-term study into the wake of the attacks in Southport. And, she named immigration as one of those things that is weakening social cohesion in the UK. Or whether what we've seen in Epping and in some of these other places is just a flash in the pan, an anomaly. What do you make of it?
I think in some respects, I think that immigration goes hand in hand with the fact that the economy has just flatlined for the last 15 years. And the idea that immigrants are coming to this country, are being given a warm bed and food in a hotel that a lot of people in Epping wouldn't otherwise be able to afford to live in, where it's still being used as a hotel, really grates with people. I think that the number now currently for the number of asylum seekers who came in the last year is about 100,000. So people see that this is not an issue that the government, despite the fact that it says it will get a handle on, is failing to do so. So when a party like Homeland or indeed Reform comes along and says that they're going to foreground this issue and make it the number one issue to campaign on, then people inevitably react quite positively towards that.
When people talk of staring down the barrel of a summer of discontent, I mean, do you think they're just being hyperbolic? I mean, we might see more things like Epping, but do you think it could get much worse than that?
It's difficult to say. I think that on the last summer was instructive for the police. The police, when I was there last Thursday, there were more police officers there than there were protesters. The police were very proactive in ensuring that protesters and counter-protesters did not come anywhere near each other. Both groups were penned inside metal barriers quite far away from the hotel itself. When the protesters then tried to move towards the town centre, they were flanked all the way by a cordon of officers, and the police have clearly learned from the experience of last summer and have been very proactive in preventing any kind of flash of violence that might then cause a wider conflagration. Having said that, though, last weekend I think was a signal that these things can spread, and the number of places that saw protesting was quite significant, albeit often the number of counter-protesters outweighed the number of protesters. So it's difficult to say, I think, at this stage, as to how much it'll spread. I think probably the likelihood is that it would take another incident for this to really take hold again, but who knows.
Tom Ball, reporter at The Times. There is plenty more from him over at thetimes.com if you've got a subscription, on this story, on the far right in the UK, and also an investigation he did last year going undercover at a school that was teaching children conspiracy theories. You'll get lots more of this kind of story if you subscribe to our podcast for free. That way you will never miss an episode whenever there is a new one. That is it from us today. Today's producer was Edith Rousselot. The executive producer was Taryn Siegel. Sound design was by Tom Birchall, and theme composition by Mao Lassetto. I'm Luke Jones. See you soon.